You are 7 years old. You have a screen. Nobody is telling you what to watch, what to read, or when to stop. The screen is warm and bright, and it always has something new. It never gets tired of you. It never says go to bed. And slowly, quietly, without anyone noticing, it becomes the only teacher you have ever known. This is not a dystopian fantasy. This is a question that researchers, child psychologists, and neuroscientists are now asking with real urgency. What would actually happen to a child whose primary caregiver, educator, and social world was the internet? Not a child who used the internet a lot. A child raised by it entirely. The answer is stranger and more disturbing than you think. Start at the beginning. Start with the brain. A child's brain is not a smaller version of an adult brain. It is a construction site. From birth to around age 25, the prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for impulse control, long-term planning, and understanding consequences, is still being built. It is unfinished architecture, and the material that fills it in is experience. Real, physical, social, embodied experience. The kind that happens when you fall off a bike, when someone looks at you with disappointment, when you have to wait in line and your body learns what patience feels like. Neuroscientist Marianne Wolf, who spent decades studying how reading shapes the brain, found that the brain is not hardwired for literacy. It rewires itself through practice. Every time a child reads deeply, sustained attention pathways grow. Every time a child skips and scrolls and moves to the next thing, different pathways grow. The brain becomes what it repeatedly does. This is not a metaphor. This is neuroscience. Now give that unfinished brain to the internet. The internet is not evil. It is also not a parent. It is an attention economy. Its architecture is designed by engineers and reinforced by algorithms to maximize one thing: engagement. Not growth, not wisdom, not emotional safety. Engagement. Every scroll, every autoplay, every notification is a mechanism engineered by teams of adults whose job is to keep a human being looking at a screen for as long as possible. These systems are sophisticated. They are tested on billions of users, and they are extraordinarily good at what they do. A child raised by these systems would learn certain things very quickly. The world responds to performance. Say something outrageous and people react. Show emotion and numbers go up. Be quiet and thoughtful, and nothing happens. Psychologist Jean Twenge, who has studied generational shifts in mental health across decades, found that adolescents who spend more time on screens and less time in face-to-face interaction show measurably higher rates of anxiety, depression, and loneliness. Not because screens are inherently harmful, because they replace the thing that is not replaceable, the thing that only happens in a room with another person. But here's where it gets more complicated. The internet would also teach this child extraordinary things, knowledge that no single teacher could provide: languages, music, mathematics, history, science. The accumulated output of millions of human minds, accessible for free. A child with genuine curiosity and no guidance would find corners of the internet that most adults never discover. Philosophy forums, coding tutorials, documentaries made by people who spent their lives obsessing over a single subject and then gave everything they knew to a camera. The internet, in some pockets, is the most generous library ever built. So the child would be, in some ways, extraordinary, and in other ways, profoundly broken. By the age of 10, the social gap would be visible. Human beings learn empathy the way they learn language, through immersion and practice. You learn what it feels like to hurt someone by watching their face change. You learn how to repair a relationship by staying in the room through the discomfort of conflict. You learn how to read another person's mood from the way they hold their shoulders, the pace of their breathing, the small involuntary signals the body broadcasts before the mouth says anything. These signals do not exist on a screen, not fully. Emoji are not faces. Text is not a voice. And a child who grew up without those signals would be reading a language everyone else learned fluently. Researcher Robin Dunbar, who developed the famous theory that humans can only maintain about 150 stable social relationships, argued that these relationships are built through physical proximity and what he called social grooming. Eye contact, touch, shared, physical space. The internet cannot provide these things. You can have 10,000 followers and 0 people who know what you look like when you are scared. The child would struggle in rooms with people, not because they were unkind, because they were unequipped. Their brain had been built in a world without the inputs that human brains were designed to receive. They would know everything about the world as described in words and videos. They would know almost nothing about the world as experienced in a body, in a room, with another person who is unpredictable and complicated and cannot be paused. The teenage years would accelerate everything. The algorithm would have been watching this child for years. It would know which videos they rewatched, which topics they searched at 3 in the morning, what made them stay and what made them leave, and it would use all of that information to build a world tailored entirely to their existing beliefs, fears, and desires, not to challenge them, not to broaden them, to confirm them. This is what researchers call a filter bubble. And for an adult with a fully formed sense of self, it is concerning. For a child who built their entire identity inside it, it is the only reality they know. Psychologist Jonathan Haidt, who has written extensively on the impact of social media on adolescent mental health, describes this as a kind of identity capture. The algorithm does not just show you content. It shows you a version of yourself reflected back, amplified, and encouraged toward an extreme. A child who showed early interest in anger found more content about anger. A child who showed early anxiety found content that confirmed every fear. Not because anyone intended this. Because engagement is maximized when emotion is maximized. And the most powerful emotions are fear, outrage, and longing. The child would not know any of this was happening. It would feel like discovery. It would feel like finally being understood. And then someone would speak to them in person for the first time in a real sustained way. And neither of them would know how to do it. Here's the hidden problem. It is not the knowledge gap. The child raised by the internet might know more facts than almost anyone their age. It is the wisdom gap. Knowledge is information. Wisdom is knowing what to do with it. Wisdom requires failure. It requires consequences that cannot be undone with a delete button. It requires being in a situation where no one is watching and choosing to behave well anyway. It requires time passing slowly and having to tolerate it. These experiences are not available online. They're only available in the irreversible, unpausable, unrepeatable flow of real life. Developmental psychologist Alison Gopnik, who has studied how children learn through play and exploration, argues that children are not just small adults absorbing information. They are active scientists running experiments on the world. They need resistance. They need a world that pushes back, a world that says no and means it, a world where cause and effect are real and immediate. The internet pushes back with a dislike button. Reality pushes back with gravity, with time, with the unchangeable feelings of another person. The child raised by the internet would be brilliant in some dimensions and hollow in others. They would be fluent in the language of content, but a stranger to the experience of presence. They would know how to perform emotion, but not always how to feel it. They would have access to every map ever drawn, but no knowledge of how it feels to be lost and find your way back. And here is the deepest twist of all. The internet that raised this child was built by humans. It contains everything humans ever thought and felt and made and argued about. Every poem, every discovery, every confession, every act of extraordinary kindness, recorded and uploaded and preserved. The child absorbed all of it. They grew up swimming in the full record of human experience, and yet they were somehow alone inside it, because the internet gives you access to humanity. It does not give you a human being. You're 7 years old. You have a screen. It is warm and bright, and it always has something new. But the most important things about being human, the things that make you capable of love and courage and real understanding, those things are not on the screen. They're in the face of the person sitting across from you. In the awkward silence before someone says something true. In the ordinary, uncomfortable, irreplaceable experience of being in a room with another person who is also trying to figure out how to be alive.